Today, we're going to explore how the final experiment is being used as a massive PSYOP, but not in the way most think. I apologize if this is a bit long, but this involves explaining some concepts that people may be unfamiliar with if philosophy isn't their primary focus. Concepts that can't be explained in a soundbite. And I want to explain this in a way that as many people as possible can understand. First, the real-false dichotomy of TFE is real or fake. Focusing on whether it was staged serves to distract truthers from the deeper, more crucial issue at hand, which I will cover in this video. The enemy excels at crafting false dichotomies because they keep the debate contained within controlled parameters. By focusing truthers' attention on real or fake, they're diverting attention away from the fundamental question: are the heavens even in the domain of science in the first place? We need to reframe the discussion. The proper focus needs to be dismantling the false assumptions that underpin much of the debate surrounding the lights in the sky. People, globers, and most flat earthers are failing to understand the limitations of the scientific method when it comes to metaphysical matters. The heavens, being part of a spiritual and non-material realm, cannot be scientifically modeled in a predictive way, and this video will cover how that's justified, for both Bible believers and otherwise. This isn't about lacking data. It's about the limitations of science as a tool for investigating things beyond the material world. This PSYOP exploits a widespread false assumption that everything observable is in the domain of science. In other words, the assumption that, if we can see it, we can use science to predictably model it. Usually that's true, but there are exceptions. The lights in the sky are one of those exceptions, as we can't verify their material objects existing in the natural realm, which science is limited to. The fact we can't verify if the celestial phenomena are material objects existing in the natural realm removes them from the domain of science entirely. So we can't do science with them. That's not an option on the table for us. If you're not tracking this yet, don't worry. I'll explain this in more depth as the video progresses, so I urge you to keep watching until the end. The exact fallacy being committed is rare, so many people struggle with understanding it, especially those who don't study philosophy. So, before I explain further, let's go through Plato's allegory of the cave, as many have told me it helped them greatly with grasping why it's not always correct to assume. If we can see it, we can model it. Imagine there's a cave deep underground. In this cave, a few prisoners have been tied up since birth. They can't move, and all they can see is the cave wall in front of them. Behind the prisoners, there's a path and a fire. Occasionally, someone walks down the path and holds up an object. The fire produces a shadow of the object on the cave wall. Since the prisoners have never seen anything else, they interpret the shadows as material beings moving around, giving them names. They imagine a materialistic model of what they're seeing to try to make sense of it, and they conflate their materialistic model with reality. One day, one of the prisoners breaks free. As soon as he turns around and sees the fire, he begins to realize he's been deceived his entire life. As he leaves the cave, he sees the real world outside that he never saw before. Excited by his discoveries, he returns to his fellow inmates in the cave to inform them of the real world outside the cave. But the prisoners can't imagine anything other than the shadows on the wall. So they accuse him of losing his mind. The escapee's eyes adjusted to the brightness of the sunlight, making it hard to see in the dark cave, causing him to stumble around. Noticing his stumbling, the prisoners laugh at his foolishness. They make a pact to never leave their places, as they don't want to end up stumbling around ranting like a madman like him. That's Plato's allegory of the cave. Now notice, the prisoners could see the shadows on the wall. They assumed if we can see it, we can model it in their minds. Yet, they were wrong. The fallacy is the same as anyone who thinks they can use science to predictably model the heavens. In both scenarios, it's assumed they're seeing material objects without the ability to verify that. The scenarios are analogous in more ways than just that, and here's where it really gets interesting. The prisoners in the cave were tied up there since birth. never perceiving anything else, limiting what they could imagine. So they didn't consider there could be an entire unseen realm of existence outside the cave, and that the shadows could be mere projections cast from that unseen realm. In the same way, the senses of humans are limited, such that we can't directly perceive the spiritual realm with our senses. So most don't consider that the lights in the sky could be mere projections from the unseen spiritual realm, entailing they don't have a material cause. Instead, most simply assume they must be material objects existing within the natural realm, without the ability to verify it. Now, tie this line of thought over to the final experiment. This PSYOPs is targeting this widespread intellectual error, how common it is for people to misinterpret the lights in the sky through the false assumptions of materialism and scientism. But the Bible describes the heavens as part of a different realm, a spiritual, non-material realm, governed by God's laws and ordinances. God says to Job in Job chapter 38, verses 33, "Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set their dominion over the earth?" This is extremely significant, as this entails the heavens operate under different laws and ordinances than here on earth. It helps at this point to understand the difference between a descriptive model and a predictive model. Science deals with predictive models, as they predict what will happen based on underlying laws. A predictive model is like saying, there can't be a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, even though I've never seen this before. A descriptive model just describes what we've already observed. So a descriptive model is like saying, where I live, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. I know this by seeing it myself. Now, in order to use science to make a predictive model of what we haven't observed before, it must be true that what's being observed exists within the natural realm, so that its underlying laws can be used to make said predictions. And that's the problem with trying to predictably model the heavens with the scientific method. The heavens are governed by laws we can't access or comprehend. As we just saw in Job, God reminds us that these laws belong to Him and aren't comprehensible to us. Any attempt to create a predictive model of the heavens assumes that we can scientifically study something that is beyond science's reach. TFE and similar endeavors make this false assumption, and this is why it doesn't even matter if TFE is real or fake, because even if it's real, it's pseudoscience. This is the case even for those who don't believe the Bible too, because, as I covered, science is limited to what's verifiably material in the natural realm, which the lights in the sky are not. This places the celestial phenomena in the domain of metaphysics, not science, even according to secularists, so long as they're not failing to recognize the limits of science. The limits of science that mainstream academia lists themselves. The reason why this has gone unnoticed by so many, globers and flat earthers alike, is because they indoctrinate humanity into materialism and scientism since birth to limit us. Much like the prisoners in Plato's allegory of the cave were limited by being tied up in the cave since birth. Their prison was physical, while ours is psychological and paradigmatic. I'm trying to free people from the unseen shackles imprisoning their minds with my content.
Born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.
Most resist and mock the truth, again, just like the prisoners in the cave.
It's not possible. Stop. Let me out. Let me out! I want out!
But if you're a real one who wants the true positions for epistemology and metaphysics to replace scientism and materialism with, click here to see another video I made to cover exactly that. Truthers need a call to action. I urge the FE community to stop trying to fit the heavens into a scientific framework that they were never meant to occupy. We need to stop the bickering and division this PSYOP intends to cause with this real or fake false dichotomy, when the correct third option is that the final experiment is pseudoscience either way. The realization that the heavens aren't in the domain of science, meaning any attempt to model them will only be descriptive at best, not predictive, undermines this PSYOP completely by refusing to engage on its false terms. Now, I understand people are going to incessantly ask any flat earther if we think TFE is real or fake. Anyhow, I think the best response is, I withhold judgment on the issue. We don't have to affirm it's real or affirm it's fake. Don't let them bait you into jumping to conclusions about things that aren't independently verifiable to anyone watching. Even if it is real, it doesn't contradict what the Bible says about the sun doing a circuit. The footage shows the sun doing a circuit over 24 hours, just not the type of circuit predicted in the popular circling sun model of the heavens. But that circling sun model is a predictive model, so it's an invalid model for the same reason TFE itself is invalid. It commits the same category error fallacy I just explained. It assumes the heavens are in the domain of science when they're not, trying to predictably model them, something we don't have the ability to do. I got a good question while making this video from a commenter, so I figured I'd add it on to the end. I figure others may be wondering this too. He says, "One thing I do not get is how the globe heads managed to predict the spiritual nature of the heavens if they did not fake it. This is why fake or real is a relevant question." It's a good question. However, the question assumes that the globies predicted the spiritual nature of the heavens, but this is false. They didn't predict anything. They've only described phenomena within their materialist framework. Secret societies have had access to ancient knowledge, maps, and observations long before the modern FE movement emerged in the last decade. They leveraged that knowledge to build their model, not to predict truth, but to deceive humanity by cloaking their descriptions in the guise of science. So they didn't predict the spiritual nature of the heavens, they obscured it. Their heliocentric model strips the heavens of their spiritual essence and reinterprets observable patterns as mechanistic phenomena. The heliocentric model wasn't developed overnight. It's the result of hundreds of years of iterative tweaks, adjustments, and outright fabrications. This slow build gave them the ability to refine their narrative to align with observable phenomena, not by predicting it, but by updating their explanations after the fact. These secret societies have had access to vast amounts of stolen wealth, occulted knowledge, and even technology we don't have access to, giving them a huge head start over grassroots movements like Flat Earth. Whenever their model appeared to fail, for example Mercury's orbit not matching Newtonian predictions, they added new elements, such as Einstein's theory of relativity. These aren't predictions, but reactive changes to salvage their narrative. Here's an analogy that may help. Imagine someone draws a picture of a fantasy creature and claims, "This is real because I drew it accurately." It's not real. They simply made a convincing description. Globies, led by secret societies, do the same with the heliocentric model. They pass off well-crafted descriptions as proof, but it's just them forcing their materialist worldview onto spiritual realities. You say real or fake is still a relevant question, but it's a trap. By framing the debate as real or fake, they distract truthers into debating irrelevant details, ensuring the focus remains on fictional materialist mechanics of the heavens rather than their true spiritual nature. If you grant real or fake as relevant, they win this game by default because they control the narrative and the supposed evidence. I urge viewers to the third option. The spiritual heavens operate by divine laws, not human science. Those divine laws are different than the laws governing Earth, making it literally impossible to do science or make predictions about the heavens, as scientific predictions assume earthly laws, not divine laws. So, the Globies didn't predict anything. Their model is just a patchwork quilt of stolen knowledge and fabricated explanations, refined over centuries with vast resources at their disposal. The 24-hour sun PSYOP is designed to keep you debating under their false scientism and materialism framework instead of stepping outside it to recognize the true spiritual nature of the heavens. Don't let them box you into their materialist narrative. God's creation is far greater than anything they can comprehend or counterfeit.